From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro took to the stage of the 24th Sao Paulo Forum to express his solidarity with the peoples of the region, paying particular attention to the people of Nicaragua as they face an ongoing wave of violence. Maduro also spoke of the crisis his own country faces and warned about the possibility of a foreign invasion.
Now in Nicaragua they're implying the method they applied to us in 2014, the guarimbas, the violent protests. And last year, exactly a year ago, Venezuela had 120 days continuously of violent groups paid by the US Embassy, violent groups, and a world media campaign to present Venezuela in chaos, on the brink of civil war, and a dictatorial government repressing the people who were protesting. Now, it's a perfect script, and now it's being applied to Sandinista Nicaragua. All our solidarity and support to President Daniel Ortega Saavedra, Comrade Rosario Murillo, and to the people of Nicaragua who will overcome the violence, who will overcome the terrorism, and peace will triumph in Nicaragua. Because it's not no small thing what they say about Venezuela in the world, in the US press. The campaign against us for 20 years, but especially in the last 5 years, would justify any kind of action, adventurous action, by the far right, the Ku Klux Klan that governs Washington. They would justify it with that, because they've lined up the media across the world, the world upside down, as Eduardo Galeano said. A dictatorship and humanitarian crisis in Venezuela to justify an invasion, occupation.
The presidents of Bolivia and El Salvador, Evo Morales and Salvador Sanchez Cerén, also addressed the Sao Paulo Forum. Morales recalled Fidel Castro's words when the Cuban leader told him that a revolution is not done with guns, but with the people, and Sanchez Cerén, for his part, praised the forum and called it the basis for a more just and unified Latin America.
How to make the revolution, when and how, where do we get the guns and the bullets. And he just talked about health and education for 6 or 7 hours. And at last I said, Brother Fidel, how do you make a revolution? Where do we buy the arms in Mexico? And he told me, Fidel said, Evo. The revolution now is not with arms, not with bullets. We have to make the revolution like Hugo Chavez, with the people. Sao Paulo Forum will continue to consolidate as a necessary instrument left by Fidel and Lula, which will allow us to regroup our forces and reassert our ideals, our democratic and revolutionary ideals, for a Latin America which is fairer. And so in the name of the people, we will win.
And as the final speaker of the day, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel recognized the long-lasting struggle of progressive governments in the region, who often face economic and military pressure.
History teaches us that when a revolutionary social project, which is just and develops, it will suffer huge economic, diplomatic, and even military pressure, supported by campaigns in the media to try bring together these aggressive actions including the threat of invasion. This is the price paid by our peoples for challenging the rules of the imperial order.
Supporters of the former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva have launched an online campaign to highlight the injustice of the leftist leader's incarceration. Our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Mia Alberti, reports.
100 Days of Injustice is the hashtag trending on Brazilian Twitter today, as thousands share their support for former President Lula da Silva, in jail for over 3 months now. The hashtag is part of a new campaign by the Workers' Party to demand Lula's release, just a month before the deadline for the official candidate registration for the upcoming election.
100 days of Lula in jail. 100 days of an injustice. Where is the proof? What crime did Lula commit?
A never-before-seen statement from Lula da Silva was also released. In the video, filmed just minutes before his arrest, the former president reiterates his innocence and demands his case be reviewed.
I want them to judge the validity of this case, the validity of the accusations against me, so they can find out if I committed a crime or not. Then they could arrest me, and I respect that decision.
In this clip, Lula also rails against the Brazilian judiciary, accusing them of mixing politics with justice.
If these people want to do politics, they better leave their position as representative of the state, as public workers, and enlist in a party, run for office, and then do politics.
The Workers' Party say Lula will run for the presidency, but the Brazilian justice system is divided over the legal possibility of his release. Lawyer Luiz Felipe Panelli says the chances of getting the former president out of jail are slim.
It will be very hard for Lula to run for office because he was convicted in second instance. There is still an appeal in the Supreme Federal Court and in the Supreme Court of Justice, but the electoral law is very clear. After a second instance conviction, a defendant cannot run for president.
Panelli says Lula's best shot is a change in the Supreme Federal Court, where the leftist leader's case is up for review.
The president of the Supreme Federal Court, Carmen Lucia, says she won't review Lula's case, but she is leaving, and the next president should be Minister Diaz Toffoli, a historic ally of the Workers' Party, who already opposed jail in cases of second instance.
Lula is serving a 12-year jail sentence in Curitiba Federal Prison, and even if he's barred from running, his influence might still lead his party to victory.
Nicaragua's National Assembly has extended the deadline for the Truth, Justice and Peace Commission to deliver the results of its investigation into who is responsible for the violence that has taken place in the country since April. The commission is expected to investigate the deaths, kidnapping and disappearances, as well as the acts of vandalism against public and private property. According to the Truth, Justice and Peace Commission, violence in the country has left 247 people dead. And Nicaraguan Minister Paulo has said that the government has defeated a coup in the country after months of protests.
The good news in Nicaragua is that the coup has failed. The attempt to carry out a coup d'etat in Nicaragua is already defeated. And that is very good news because what it leaves then is dialogue, because the coup plotters did not want dialogue.
And in Colombia, yet another social leader has been killed. The body of Ibes Trujillo, an activist from Agua Blanca in Cauca, was found today. The human rights defender had been kidnapped on July 10th by an armed group. His slaying has outraged communities in Cauca. At least 311 social leaders have been killed in Colombia since 2016. Mexican teachers and campesinos are making their requests to the incoming president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Meanwhile, the left-wing leader announced he will take a pay cut as part of his planned austerity measures.
Macario has come all the way from his hometown near the Gulf of Mexico. His native tongue is Nahuatl. But he has come to Mexico City to make a request in Spanish for all campesinos in his community.
Fair pricing and fair market, so we may feed our people. We want to take action to eradicate hunger.
Agricultural workers are calling out decades of abandonment they faced, stating that there have been 1 million jobs lost since NAFTA was signed in 1994.
We will take part in this change. We will support actions that seek to mitigate the misery and abandonment we've suffered for over 30 years of neoliberal governments.
Teachers are also calling for a press conference to present their needs to the incoming government.
I think the basis for solving these issues is dialogue, and we want the government, on every level, change the way in which they deal with social movements.
As a part of his agenda, President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador announced a series of 50 measures to combat corruption and increase revenue. Among these, he will slash his own salary by 40%.
We want the budget to be for everyone. We want funds to reach Ecatepec, Chimalhuacán, Nesa, Tarahumara.
2 weeks after the presidential elections, AMLO announced he will take a 4-day break before returning to work on the transition of power before December 1st.
We're going to take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. Chile's Nevados de Chillán volcano complex is on orange alert after minor activity in the peaks, which suggests the possibility of a major eruption. As a precaution, the authorities have deployed emergency officials and set up checkpoints around the volcano. The complex is a popular tourist destination with several luxury hotels located nearby. And severe rain has affected several areas in Costa Rica, some of which are on high alert due to the risk of flooding. Our correspondent, Fernando Francia, has the story.
Costa Rica is going through its 16th tropical wave and entering in number 17. Rain continues in the Caribbean side of the country, which received a month's average rainfall this last weekend alone. This has generated floods in the province of Limón, where the red alert continues. Authorities continue to be on alert in order to prevent any catastrophes. The president has traveled to the affected zone and has said resources will be assigned to respond to the emergencies.
Thanks to Fernando for that report. Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness has announced economic growth in all 8 service industries as part of an Action 18 campaign. Posting on Twitter, Holness said that the country is heading in the right direction. Jamaica is on a drive to improve economic prosperity and raise living standards. In Trinidad and Tobago, the ruling People's National Movement lost ground on the local government level after a by-election for 2 seats. The opposition United National Congress wrested Barataria away from the People's National Movement, while the PNM retained the Belmont East seats. The seats became vacant after 2 PNM councillors died last year. Now, the election doesn't change much on the local government or national level, but the opposition sees it as a sign that the people are getting tired of the ruling party.
We say to you, Dr. Rowley, your days are numbered. You have won this seat in Barataria in 2 local government elections, not just one. And now the UNC has taken the lead.
And Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley is hoping to change public housing in the country. She described a housing settlement known as the Pine Housing Area in St. Michael as the closest thing Barbados has to a favela. Prime Minister Mottley questioned whether the time has come to look at reducing population density in the island's housing estates. The government is expected to bring a new Town and Country Planning Act before Parliament before the end of November.
And we wonder why we have the social problems that we have without recognizing that we have literally participated in the calcification of government policy and programming over the years. So what has happened? Houses and public housing that were built in the 1950s and 60s, not even as wide as this platform probably, a little deeper, parents, children, now holding 3 and 4 generations of people. If you don't go and see it yourself, you would never know, you would never imagine, you would never contemplate. And that's the benefit of the Rubbing Shoulders program.
And staying in Barbados, undergraduate students at the Cave Hill campus of the University of the West Indies will in fact have their tuition paid for this September. The university today said it had finally received word from the Ministry of Education confirming that government would cover the costs. Last week, parents were told they would have to pay the tuition costs themselves and wait for reimbursement. Free university education was a pillar of Mia Mottley's election campaign. Women's rights organizations in Guatemala are urging the public ministry to speed up the investigations into accusations of sexual abuse by President Jimmy Morales. Activists believe the safety of the victims could be at risk.
Social organizations have voiced their concern about the bombshell that the former foreign minister and columnist Edgar Gutierrez raised to the general attorney about 2 women who allegedly had been victims of sexual abuse by President Jimmy Morales.
The only thing we are asking for is to enforce the law and have an impartial investigation, and to not have malicious litigations, and to not underestimate these campaigns that for us is outrageous, because the government is the one which should guarantee human rights. But now it's being accused of possible sex violence against women.
Lawyers for the victims say there's an audio recording and photographs in addition to the testimony of one of the victims to corroborate their claims.
There are organizations that have the experience working with female victims of violence. We have already talked with them and they are willing to collaborate immediately.
An expert in issues of gender violence says that in the country these types of crimes are common. But she says that silence is not an option, and it is imperative to find out if President Morales did or did not commit these crimes.
Many times people don't believe those who claim to be victims of sexual violence, and that is why we must start believing them. The public ministry and the Attorney General have a great responsibility to investigate and protect the victims.
President Jimmy Morales has not addressed this allegation against him. For now, the Prosecutor's Office of Crimes Against Women have already opened a file on the complaint against the president, and the investigation has begun.
The Supreme Court of Justice in El Salvador has accepted a petition to reopen the murder case of the poet Roque Dalton, who was killed in 1975.
Jorge is the youngest son of Salvadorian poet Roque Dalton. He has saved about 80% of his father's intellectual work. Roque Dalton was murdered in 1975 by his own partners in the Revolutionary People's Army. 43 years later, the murder case will be reopened at the family's request.
We still don't know where his remains are. So for me, for my family, and for my dad's closest friends, this is incredibly painful, because it hasn't ended. My dad is not in peace, and neither are we.
The family and their lawyers brought the case to the Supreme Court of Justice, and the court accepted their request.
This is for the prosecutors to investigate and to make another request to process the case. Our mission is to undo the injustice committed against poet Roque Dalton.
Juan José Dalton, another one of Roque's sons, has been documenting the case in search of justice.
There are witnesses still alive. They have provided more information to statements we already had from those involved, Joaquín Villalobos and Jorge Meléndez. We also have the documents they published after my father's murder. We want to know if they are responsible or not. And if they are, we want them to face justice.
Recognized as one of the most important poets of El Salvador, Dalton is known worldwide as the revolutionary poet. His family waits for the case to be solved and to finally find his remains.
Time now for another break, but join us again after another look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. U.S. President Donald Trump appears to have backpedaled on his previous claim that he didn't believe Russia hacked the 2016 elections.
So, just to repeat it, I said the word would instead of wouldn't, and the sentence should have been, and I thought it would be maybe a little bit unclear on the transcript or unclear on the actual video. The sentence should have been, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be Russia. Sort of a double negative. So you can put that in, and I think that probably clarifies things pretty good by itself.
The recent meeting between Putin and Trump is continuing to cause heated outrage among U.S. liberals and new conservatives alike. Our correspondent in Washington, Jorge Gestoso, brings us more on the reaction from the United States.
President Trump is in damage control mood this morning here at the White House. He just tweeted that when he was in Europe and he met with the people of OTAN, he had strengthened OTAN and therefore is making much stronger position against Russia. Therefore, his presence at the summit with Putin was correct. He was absolutely positive that the relations gone much better. He says, therefore, that what is absolutely untrue is the way the media is reporting precisely that event, and not as the media is presented it, that has been a betrayal from President Trump regarding the intelligence community of the U.S. That's exactly what Republicans and Democrats at the Congress is absolutely blaming President Trump, say that is unpatriotic, that is shameful, that he was throwing under the bus the services, that intelligence services of the U.S., that they have, according to what they say, have proven that it was interference of Russia in the U.S. elections in 2016. And what is very interesting is the deliberate effort in the U.S. to continue to paint Russia as the boogeyman, as the enemy, as someone that is still the Soviet Union with another name, and therefore it's definitely nothing that you can deal with in a respectful way. Therefore, that is the message, and you have to remember that that permits the military budgets to grow, something that is very important for the congressmen. And also the congressmen, even though they were criticizing the policy of President Trump and his attitude in that summit, is not criticizing the person, he's not criticizing himself, but his policies, also because they are very scared that the midterms elections are coming very closely now in November, and they are in shaky grounds because they can lose their seats. We get back to you now.
We thank Jorge Gestoso for that report. Meanwhile, in Tehran, the U.S. president has won a prize for the most hated person in Iran. Trump beat Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley for the top spot in the Wet Gunpowder Prize, which collects votes on the person most despised by the nation. A Trump lookalike was present to collect the award, while the man himself was busy at the time meeting President Putin in Helsinki. In Spain, protests are ongoing as Amazon workers continue to strike in Madrid. Our correspondent Adriana Cardoso has the story.
So we are into the second day of the Amazon workers' strike here in Spain, in the biggest logistical centre of the country, here in Madrid. Yesterday, 80% of the workers supported the strike, and there were clashes between protesters and the police. The unions have denounced the fact that Amazon tried to boycott this strike by hiring 350 temporary employees. They say that this is illegal because it completely ignores the union's demands. Amazon say that the protesters' claims and the supporting data for the strike are fake. The workers of this giant company have been protesting for years since Amazon accepted this sectoral agreement which worsens workers' labour conditions. Also, Amazon employees haven't received a salary increase in 4 years, despite a huge boom in the growth of the company, whose owner is the richest man in the world. So for all of these reasons, workers and unions have been looking to make agreements with the company's board of directors. Over the last 4 months, they've been trying to do this, but no agreement has been reached. And that's why this 3-day strike is taking place during one of the biggest sales periods for the company, Amazon Prime Day.
Esta huelga de 3 días durante uno de los mayores días de venta.
Several civilians were killed and others wounded in a series of Saudi-led airstrikes on various locations in Al Hudaida, Yemen. 6 civilians were killed when an airstrike hit a house in the Zabad area. Another person was killed and 5 others injured when a number of vehicles were bombed in the Al Jahrahi area. To mark 100 years since the birth of Nelson Mandela, a South African group known as the Elders opened the 100 Sparks of Hope Peace Park. They planted 100 trees representing the 100 Sparks of Hope. The Elders is an independent group that was founded by Mandela in 2007 to advance peace and human rights globally. In attendance were Mary Robinson, the former president of Ireland, and a senior member of the Johannesburg Mayoral Committee. The planted trees will serve as a reminder of Mandela's legacy and the causes he fought for. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media. We're on Facebook, we are on Twitter, and we are on Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Suni Gray. Thank you so much for watching.